Well, one thing that the Knights Templar always practiced, they didn't put all their eggs in one basket. So the Templar treasure is still distributed across North America in that way. And I can't say much, but I've been introduced to a number of natives, elders that have knowledge of where the treasure is. And they in fact, are the established guardians.
Hello, amazing people, and welcome back to this week's episode of The Ryan Files. Tonight we follow a trail cloaked in mystery and buried deep beneath the surface of official history. A trail that just might lead to the Knights Templar in America. We've all heard the myths. A secret order protecting sacred relics, fleeing persecution in Europe, vanishing from the historical record, and then silence? Or was it? What if that silence wasn't the end, but the beginning of a new chapter, unfolding in the unlikeliest of places, the mountains, forests, and riverbanks of North America? Our guest tonight, Bill Mann, is no stranger to this mystery. With a family lineage and research that stretches across continents and centuries, he's uncovering stunning clues, from encoded landmarkers to sacred geometry, all pointing toward a hidden Templar presence on American soil. The implications? Massive. If true, it means the spiritual and geopolitical roots of this continent run deeper than we were ever taught. Now, before we begin, let's be clear. This episode is an exploration of ideas, theories, and historical breadcrumbs. We do not claim absolute proof, and we encourage you to think critically, ask questions, and most of all, stay curious. That's what the Ryan Files is all about. So grab your torch, step into the cave, and let's uncover the secrets long buried beneath our feet, because this is the Ryan Files. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me this week on the Ryan Files. Special guest, Bill Mann. We are going to be talking everything about the Templars today. Thank you so much for joining me.
It's good to be here, Ryan. Thank you for asking me.
So I learned about you and your books through Inner Traditions. I was looking and I said, man, this guy has got some information, some knowledge that I need. It's very funny. There's a show on television. My wife makes fun of me for watching it. Called The Curse of Oak Island. And just like the gentleman on that episode, I read that Reader's Digest article as a kid at my grandmother's house about Oak Island and this treasure that supposedly is deposited there. And it turns out it might be connected to Templar treasure and whatnot. So I'm automatically fascinated about this and the Knights Templar and everything that happened over in Europe. And there's just so much mystery behind it, and there's a lot of money that seems to just have disappeared.
Well, it's interesting. The Curse of Oak Island. Actually, my wife is from Nova Scotia, Cape Breton, and we used to take the kids 35 years ago down to Oak Island, and all there was a hole in the ground at that time. And I had done a lot of reading about it as a kid, and I was fascinated with it myself. So it's really come full circle. I always find it kind of funny, though. I watch The Curse of Oak Island myself, and every 10 minutes they come across as hopefully this is the most historic revelation of in North America history every 10 minutes. So I find that kind of interesting. But everything they talk about always comes around to the Knights Templar, and they so much want to relate it to the Knights Templar. There is a relationship there. When I became Supreme Grand Master in Knights Templar Canada, Sovereign Great Priory, I was contacted by one of their producers, and we went through a series of interviews, and everything was going well, and it looked like I was going to be on the show until such time that I said, there's no Templar treasure on the island, and they went, "What? You can't say that." So unfortunately, I missed my chance for fame and fortune on the show itself. But
I don't know. I don't know about that, but hey, listen, if you know that for a fact, then you're one step up.
It's very interesting. The last 30 years, I've devoted all of my time, all of my precious time to researching the Knights Templar. And it's interesting, about 30 years ago, after my parents died, It's only then that I discovered the Mann family connection to Freemasonry, and discovered, surprisingly, and I didn't know this at all, that my great uncle, who was like my grandfather to me because my grandfather passed away before I was born, he was Supreme Grand Master of the Sovereign Great Prior Knights Templar of Canada in the 50s. And he would, as a kid, he would just generate all these puzzles and clues, and really get my mind set to racing, and introduce me to the whole Freemasonic way of life. And only after my parents died did I understand that my father and seven brothers were also Masons, along with my grandfather and four of his brothers. So there's a real history of Freemasonry in the Mann family, very English and very warrior-like and Templar-like, and I hope to continue that sort of legacy for the Mann family itself. Then on the other side, my mother, who's French native Indian, there's a lot of mystery there in relation to the family, and I found it curious. I found it really curious that my parents, after meeting for a month, recognized something in themselves that they got married. And to me, this whole idea of strategic intermarriage between native North American Indians and the Knights Templar who came to the New World in the 12th and 13th century was still there 800 years later. So I run with this notion that I am a product of a Templar, Masonic, Native North American strategic intermarriage 800 years after it first happened.
Interesting. Is that carrying on bloodlines? What is that?
It's the carrying on of bloodlines, and through that, I've been able to be introduced. Once I've developed a real relationship with the Native community here in Canada, I've been able to join a number of secret organizations on the Native North American side.
Yeah, interesting. So you kind of got to maybe the 30,000 foot view of this more so than most.
I like to say that I have it more than most, but there's a lot more to still learn of this whole secret nature of the Knights Templar in the New World.
I understand. I understand. Well, let's dive into it.
Sure.
So, obviously there's a history in Europe, starts in Europe. And we're talking about the Knights Templar. We're talking about, there's a number of speculations about exactly what they started from, why they started. Obviously, there's the Crusades, protection for pilgrims between Europe and going to Jerusalem to worship. Some people say that's just a front, but there are some things that are very obvious. They were connected to the Catholic Church initially. They were great bankers, became very wealthy, and it certainly helped kind of, I think, if I'm not mistaken, almost bail out some of the, like bail out the French government at some point.
No, absolutely. The interesting thing about the Knights Templar, the original Knights Templar with Godfrey de Bouillon and Hugh de Payan, they knew how to play both sides to the middle. And that to me is the most interesting thing. 1,000 years ago, nothing has really changed, uh, except from a digital point of view, but they really knew they had the most strategic communication lines available, the most strategic military lines. But to me, it was a total smokescreen for the real purpose of the Knights Templar. And the real purpose of the Knights Templar, I've speculated and actually proved that the original Knights Templar family were Jewish, cloaked in Catholicism, and they converted because they had to. But what they had access to, the French royal families, lesser royal families, was essentially the secret knowledge of where the temple treasures were hidden following the sacking by the Romans in 70 AD. So everything was a smokescreen for the purpose of recovering those treasures and transporting them out of Jerusalem back to France, and subsequently scattered around the world and especially to the New World.
Right. So all of this is going on in Europe, and it appears that they're just got a point where they became almost too powerful. I think that the Roman Catholic Church had a little bit to do with this, and the Pope
Yes.
just said, "Hey, these guys are heretics." It was Friday the 13th. Boom. They search them all out, try to kill them all, except they didn't. And I think that part of it was a money grab as well. Um, but they
Absolutely.
but they didn't get it all, or they
They
didn't get
didn't
much
get
at
it
all.
all. 18 galleys worth of treasure supposedly left La Rochelle on the evening of Friday the 13th. And they were scattered to England, Scotland, Portugal, Denmark, Scandinavian countries. But there's also this notion that certain treasures went directly to the New World and were hidden amongst the native settlements, given that there was already this strategic bond established through intermarriage.
Interesting. So,
Yeah,
and
sorry.
this would be what time frame are we talking here? What was the year?
We're talking about 11. The Knights Templar were formally established 1118, but we're talking about roughly 1190,
So,
1170 to 1190.
okay. And so obviously if they're in the new world at that time, this whole Christopher Columbus 1492 Columbus sailed the ocean blue is like,
Yeah.
yeah, been there, done that, right?
And there's a notion that Columbus was in part of the Templar family. So he was again he was a smokescreen. He was redirecting the Spanish, which was obviously in relation to the Catholic Church, redirecting them away from where all these native settlements were in upper North America versus South America and Central America.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. And I mean, I've always wondered, like, that's a Templar cross on the sails that we see in, drawings anyways, on Columbus's ships,
Yes.
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Right here, right in front of your face. All
Well,
these.
that's the whole thing. Hidden in plain sight is what I always say, right?
Yeah. Okay, so let's let's back up here and just tell the story. We have this treasure now that has disappeared. It ends up, at least some of it, and maybe eventually all of it. I'm not sure, but it ends up spread out, but a lot of it in the New World in North America and these settlements in Canada, and then spread throughout. There's so much history up there, which is interesting how it does connect a little bit to Oak Island. But there is so much history of possible Norse people or English people. I mean, some of the stuff that they're finding on even Oak Island is remnant. You see these Italian roads, you see these different kinds of road construction that is from Europe. They're
Yes.
finding metals that have the metallic signature from only can be like from a lead mine in France. So somehow or another stuff got over there.
Absolutely. But I always like to say, picture it this way. Oak Island was sort of the first ATM. If you were going to use it to deposit certain treasures and safeguard those treasures, wouldn't you have a way of withdrawing them also?
Yeah.
Especially when the heat was starting to come across from Europe,
Yeah. Yeah. You'd have to, right? I mean, what
you'd have to.
you don't bury something just to get rid of it unless, unless it's bad. But yeah, when it comes to money, you need to be able to access it, right?
But what's interesting, the Curse of Oak Island, what the brothers have done, and I can see why they're doing this because Marty himself is both a lawyer and an engineer, so they're using a scientific base approach to everything. Everything has to be proven by science. But in Freemasonry, that there's two types of masonry. There's an operative base, which is science, and there's a speculative base, which is more the esoteric. So not only do you have to understand the science, but you have to understand the ritual, the signs, symbols, and tokens that have to be applied through this treasure process.
Wow. Oh, that's interesting. That's yeah. Okay. So let's start it. Let's start off. We're in
Sure.
North America now. How is this stuff? I mean, I got to be honest with you, Bill. I've researched stuff where there's Templar stuff all over North America. I mean, all the way out to, I mean, rocks in Minnesota. You know,
Yeah,
Minnesota farms find these Templar map symbols and whatnot. So it seems like there's even speculation out to the Old West and everything. So tell the story. This is the stuff that I don't know a lot about, and man, I'm really excited to hear what you have to say about it.
sure, sure. Well, in the 12th, 13th century, obviously the settlements that were established were along the eastern seaboard, primarily with the Mi'kmaq Indians of Nova Scotia.
Mhm.
But what you have to realize, the Mi'kmaq were only one separate nation of 56 nations, First Nations, that make up what's called the larger Algonquin Nation. And that nation extended from the eastern seaboard right to the foot of the Rockies. And it includes native bands such as the Blackfoot, the Pagan, the Blood, the Crow, the Cree, all Plains Indians, all of those Indians. So they had an instant pipeline developed through bloodlines that would allow them to transport as I say, the heat started to happen. You had major explorers like Champlain, Cabot, and others at that time in the 1500s when it was necessary to move the treasures that had been consolidated along the eastern seaboard inwards. And what you're essentially doing that if you didn't know the inland waterways, as the native North Americans did, you wouldn't have a clue where to go and through the signs, seals, and tokens that were established along the waterways, you wouldn't have a clue where the settlements were established. Um, a lot of people say to me, why isn't there evidence of the Knights Templar per se across North America? And what you have to do is realize that they were absorbed into the native North American settlements. So what I've been able to do is through my second and third books, through the Templar Meridians and the Templar sanctuaries in North America, is correlate certain native settlements. And there's clues within the names, current place names, including castles, Castlegar, Castle Mount, all of those things, that along these certain Templar meridians, the Templars essentially knew where they were going and had the ability to navigate and to reestablish the mapping that had been established previously by their ancestors. So those settlements moved along with the treasure as the centuries moved on. And I positioned the final resting place of the major Templar treasure in Montana.
How
And
about that?
if you know your Latin, Montana is stands for my refuge. So they were looking to establish a permanent refuge or sanctuary, the New Jerusalem per se, within North America. And you needed these temple treasures to sanctify the new temple.
How about that? Montana. Spent a lot of time in Montana, Bill.
Have you?
Oh yes.
Atop a horse?
No, unfortunately. Um,
But you know that there's a lot of gold mines, a lot of mines,
oh yeah.
abandoned mines there.
Oh yeah.
And I can tell you that I've spent a lot of time in Montana myself. And I'm always fascinated that the natives never worked in metals in Montana. But there's all these ancient mines that have been attributed to the natives
Right.
at one point. So,
Yeah. Interesting. All right. A couple questions here.
sure.
Um, as history often does, we get, we get a winner's version of it. Um, it just seems so ironic here that you're making this connection with Native Americans and the Freemasons. Freemasons who were not Freemasons, I'm sorry, Knights Templar, but the Knights Templar who were, established kind of in France. And then we have this thing in America we call the French and Indian War.
Yes.
Uh, is this in any way connected to any of that, where the French and the Indians kind of combined forces against the British settlements of the Americas?
Think about it. Think there was the sort of overwhelming reason. It just well, it's known as, I hate this phrase, manifest destiny. Taking the land when you can, right?
Yeah.
So, but there's the British settlers, but really, when you think about it, yeah, they were fighting the French and Indians. For what purpose? French and the native Indians had established earlier settlements throughout North America, and the British were infringing on it. But there was an underlying reason, and the underlying reason is that there was this notion that the natives had helped the French secure and hide the various Templar treasures.
So I mean, we were taught here in America, growing up, oh, they were stealing our rights to certain
Yes,
pelts. We couldn't get all the beaver pelts we wanted, so we went to war. I mean, that's kind of like almost what we were
sure,
taught.
sure.
But man, it seems like a much bigger, yeah. If there's money involved, wars happen, and it seems like that in its own way might have actually been the reason for that war in a way.
It is. It is. It really is when you realize it. Think about it. The English royalty would have had uh, s- some sense of certain treasure, right?
Yeah.
Coming from Jerusalem. There were English Knights Templar at the time of the First Crusades, but more or less the French were the ones who, the lesser nobility, as I call them, were the ones who were involved and controlled the Crusades. And they were the ones who were responsible for this hiding and securing of the Templar treasure. And when you think back of it, that their original ancestors were Jewish, there's an underlying reason there as to why they're looking to establish a new sanctuary or refuge in North America at the time. So, but throughout the centuries, it's like who laid claim to the discovery in North America? Everybody and their uncle.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
But the French had really established, and that's another interesting aspect, the whole establishment of Quebec City versus Montreal. Montreal was established by Champlain, and there's a lot of speculation that Champlain is a Knight of Malta and therefore a Knights Templar versus the Jesuits and the French king who really controlled Quebec City. So there was an interplay between Quebec City and Montreal, the establishment of those two settlements, even prior to the French Indian Wars in the 1700s.
Very interesting. You've got these huge, and listen, I want to talk about this and we're talking like a historical
Sure.
perspective. I don't want to get into, not telling people what to believe or anything else. We're just talking history here. But from a historical standpoint, you might be able to paint a better picture and put a lot of light on this with your position. The Roman Catholic Church, the Jesuits, versus the uh, the Knights Templar, Knights Malta, Freemasons. There was a lot of this, not
You would
necessarily.
also have to add, I don't know if you've heard of a lesser monastic society called the Recollets. The Recollets were actually in on the secret versus the Jesuits, and there was always that fight for French North America
Interesting,
and the Indians' favor.
interesting. And I mean, that kind of plays out too in the New World when you think of like, these guys that come over. They were all Freemasons. George Washington, all the founding fathers in North or in the United States, all Freemasons. There's a lot of Freemasonic symbols all throughout the start of the Constitution. Everything, there's a lot of Freemason symbols. Look at Washington D.C., all the Freemason symbols. It's right there in front of your eyes if you care to see it. But does that have anything to do with because from my understanding, you can paint, shed some light on
Sure.
this. The Freemasons and the Knights Templar were kind of in league, I guess.
They were intertwined,
Yeah.
you say. Now, interesting enough, one of the aspects of a new book that I'm writing is there's always this question of did the Freemasons evolve out of the Knights Templar? And is there a continuation in Knights Templar, a perpetual continuation or a continuous continuation from the Knights Templar of the First Crusades from the 1100s right through to the modern day era? And I think I have proof now that there is. And therefore, the whole aspects of who came first, the Freemasons, the Knights, or the Knights Templar. But then you have to realize is that you have the French Masonic development, which is the Scottish, known as the Scottish Rite development. The French, along the Scots, developed Freemasonry in that way, versus in 1717, the English said, "Oh, well, we don't, we want our own type of Freemasonry and nothing, we're not going to acknowledge anything that's come before that." So they established the York Rite
Right.
basis of Freemasonry. And I belong to a number of different orders on both sides. And and right now it used to be 100 years ago that you were never York Rite Mason if you were a Scottish Rite Mason and vice versa. But now I can tell you that a lot of Masons go through both ladders per se.
Okay.
So it's interesting how that evolved.
Yeah.
But there obviously was inklings of that secret in the 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, which was passed down through the various Masonic orders.
Understood. All right. So this Templar treasure ends up in what is now the United States, in a place called Montana. Um, there are all kinds of speculations out there that the founding fathers, the actual uh, Masonic order, Freemasons, wanted to start the new world. America was their country. It was their,
It was.
yeah. And so was there a combination of this, like, hey, it's in the new world, it's going to be in the country that you guys are coming. I mean, it's going to help fund you, or was there any kind of interplay there, connection with the starting of the United States of America on a Masonic level and this Templar treasure that was, ferreted away and stored in Montana?
There was. And if you look at the basis of the American Constitution and all of that is Masonic.
Yeah.
And much of it is what you referred to as Templarism, or Rosicrucianism. The wording, all of that. Thomas Jefferson was a dualist, not a Christian. All of those things. Now I know it's sort of almost sacrosanct to say that, but it's being proven and recorded. Um, but the whole Christian aspect, I think, has been sort of misconstrued. There's two different aspects, and I won't go into that too much. But when you think about it, Washington's the whole National Treasure movie
Yeah.
hit upon a little bit that the Templar treasure was going to be used to fund the American Revolution, which is a very interesting aspect in itself. But while the American Revolution was happening, you had Masons on both sides. Cornwall was a Mason. Washington was a Mason. There's questions as to was Cornwall's heart in fighting for the British, or did he have other reasons why he allowed his own capture
Wow.
at Yorktown? So all of those things play into it. So there's a mystery in there in itself. And as I say, National Treasure, the movie, a lot of this is written not only by me, but by other authors. And they were able to pick out some salient points and run with it. And I think it was well done considering the type of movie that it was.
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting too. You get back to the Revolutionary War. Who did American side? Who did we reach out to? Well, we reached out to the French.
French.
Yeah, ironically, and who we were just warring with, whatever 10, 15 years earlier. They are the ones who come in and help us get rid of the English rule. Very interesting there, right? There's these
Right.
connections, and I'm
And
sure
when you think about it, also the Louisiana Purchase
yeah,
from Napoleon, how was that arranged, and what lands did that include? It included all the lands up to the foothills of the Rocky Mountains, including what would become the state of Montana. So
yeah, wow.
was the fix in? Who knows?
Seems like it, right?
It seems like it to me, and I write about it.
Yeah, and I've always wondered. As a kid, the Louisiana Purchase was just fascinating in that we got that for nothing, basically. Um, and there's so much blood, sweat, and tears that were put into getting it and establishing it.
Yes.
Um, and then it was sold off for beans, basically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hmm.
And when you think about it, um, that allowed the colonists, the white settlers, to essentially advance westward.
Yeah,
They discovered gold in the Black Mountains, gold and silver. Miners went in, loggers went in, then the settlers went in. The railway was extended. There was a concerted effort, not only through colonization, but there must have been an underlying reason as to why this was all facilitated the way it was.
yeah, yeah. Very interesting. And there are railroads that cross through Montana. I've oftentimes said I want to take a coast to coast railroad trip just to see what that would be like. But yeah, I remember being out, and I spent a significant time in Montana. Um, you'd see the trains and the passenger cars and all that. But yeah, the train has been there for a long time for whatever reason. I'm not speculating there, but so you have this treasure, which could be significant. Allegedly, things that beyond gold and silver. There's
Yes.
treasure that's beyond gold and silver. Uh, Artifacts. We're talking about artifacts that were dug up from under the Temple Mount. So there's speculation, things like the Ark of the Covenant, things the Holy Grail, all these different kind of things could be part of this treasure. Correct?
Things that would, when you think about it, in order to sanctify the establishment of New Jerusalem,
Yeah.
would be necessary.
Yeah. Very interesting. Very interesting. So, would you speculate? Do you know? Do you have any thoughts on? Did the stuff just stay in Montana and it's been there ever since? Has it moved to other places? There's so many, you know, discussions about stuff in the Grand Canyon, these secret caves. Part of the reason why you can't access certain parts of Grand Canyon National Park are because they're there, and it's been found there allegedly by certain people. Is there any
Well,
connection there?
Well, one thing that the Knights Templar always practiced, they didn't put all their eggs in one basket. So the Templar treasure is still distributed across North America in that way. And I can't say much, but I've been introduced to a number of natives, elders that have knowledge of where the treasure is, and they in fact are the established guardians, which I find really interesting because it's it's almost the opposite to how we treat how Native North Americans are treated today. So one of the things that I'm trying to do is through my books express that the Native North Americans are the guardians of this secret knowledge. And so they should be treated in a much different way than they are treated now. And only through perhaps our acceptance of the Native North American for much more than what we accept them now will North America essentially be preserved and uh, the facilitation of a sort of new world. And I hate using a new world order, but as a new sense of environmental awareness, sustainability, all of those aspects that the Native North Americans practice today.
Interesting. Um, so you have this partnership. Uh, I mean, Bill, you have this partnership that develops between the Knights Templar and Native Americans, North America, that utilizes their knowledge of waterways, utilizes their knowledge of, you know, the ground, the land, to be able to spread this treasure to Montana, to other places. Um, they obviously had a relationship. Then, you know, the establishment of the United States shortly thereafter, you start seeing this uh, persecution of Native Americans. Listen, the history is horrible. There's no doubt about it. And, you know, there's no amount of, you know, Native America Indian casinos that justifies everything that's happened in history. Um, but the truth of the matter is, I mean, it was a terrible time to be a Native American. They were pushed off their land. They were pushed west, 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 west. But knowing governments and whatnot the way I do, is that could that be as simple as um, get rid of the people who know the history of us?
I I think it's well put the way you said it, is that to me there's a concerted genocide.
Hmm.
There, if you look through history, so what some of the things that happened to the Native North Americans here in Canada, the issues of the residential schools over the last 150 years, just atrocious. And where I grew up, a residential school was built. The first residential school in Canada was built 150 years ago, just around the corner from my home. And I felt so sorry for those kids, knowing even then, some of the 50 years ago, some of the things that were happening by the lay brothers. In this case, they were Anglican, but in other cases, most cases they were Roman Catholic. But some of the things that the little children were treated to, it was a concerted effort to obliterate the Native North American way of life. And it's actually still happening. And in Canada here, we have what's known as the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. While you can appreciate that non-native North Americans are very hesitant to even embrace, even to speak about uh, the truth,
Hmm.
let alone reconciliation. So a lot of that is happening right now, and it's happening down in the States too. The ignoring of the Native North American way of life and some of their asks and wants, and as you say, uh, it's unfortunate that the vision of Native North American has gone from being alcoholic to being money grabbers in terms of running casinos and things like that. But as you say, no number of casinos can compensate for what has been done over the last 400 years.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a different thing entirely. I won't get into the specifics of that, what I'm thinking, but like
Yeah.
we came and took their land.
Yes.
They were here before us, you know. So there's a little bit of a difference between that and some other things, but um, man, it's a brutal history. So as we take a
Sorry,
step,
there's an interesting aspect I just wanted to mention there.
yeah.
People say, well, why were the Templars embraced by the first Native North Americans when they came over in the 12th and 13th century? It's because the Templars had this essentially being that they recognized, first of all, that the Native North Americans were the guardians of the land,
Mhm.
that they did. Native North Americans don't consider themselves to be owners of the land, but the guardians of the land. But second of all, that the Native North Americans offered the sanctuary refuge to the Templars. And how was that secured? That was secured through these strategic intermarriages, through these bloodlines, which still exist to today. And there are some signed seals and tokens. If you go to any powwow, I can pick out now. the bloodlines, the mixed Templar native bloodlines, just by their costume and the colors that they wear.
Interesting. You said signs, seals, and
Tokens.
tokens. And those,
Tokens. Like if I was to approach a native elder, I would give a gift as an appreciation for being allowed within their territory. And it could be a token of tobacco, could be a token of other elements, various cloths and blankets and things like that, that demonstrate knowledge of the bloodline.
interesting. And it is about that bloodline. That's what's fascinating. You said that that bloodline lives on. Are there, besides Man, the Man
Yes,
family, are there specific bloodline family names that are around today that really exemplify that connection?
there are, but I won't tell you what the names are
Okay, okay, no problem.
because some of those names are within my family line also.
Understood, understood. So, once again, take a step back and
Sure.
looking down. You have in North America today, and let's discuss it because it could be all part of this connected. You have the United States, um, you know, obviously geographically to the north, you have Canada, to the south, you have Mexico. Um, we know that on the Canadian side, there is the uh, French and Indian connection starting, from the very beginning. But we also know that there's also Knights Templar where it all started. Is there a is there a connection to this day in Canada and the Canadian government that harkens back to that day and time in the same way that there is a definite connection in the United States to Freemasonry because of its founders? There is a connection in Mexico to Roman Catholic, Spanish originality. You know what I'm saying? These are all different.
Sure.
We get into it. You get into uh, uh, Spanish, Roman Catholic, Jesuit stuff that possibly is in Mexico. You get into the Freemasons in the United States. You get into Knights Templar in Canada. It seems like I don't know. It seems like these are
Sure.
bastions.
Sure. Well, in Canada, for example, the first Prime Minister of Canada, John A. Macdonald, was a Knights Templar.
Wow.
And if you look at the Canadian Parliament buildings that are established in Ottawa on a prominent promontory bluff overlooking the Ottawa River, which was one of those major waterways that the Templars, Native North Americans used, that is said to have been built on a Templar stronghold that was first established in the 1200s
Wow. Wow.
on the very foundations of the Knights Templar settlement.
Very interesting.
If you look at Montreal, the established in Montreal, the formal establishment in Montreal in 1664 is said to have been built in old Montreal on an earlier Templar stronghold. So this whole notion that things were the foundation of Canada was built on earlier Templar foundations really takes a sort of double meaning when you think about it.
Yeah. And we've learned that a lot of stuff, not just with the Templars, but and the Freemasons, but like that, a lot of stuff, locational stuff.
Yes.
There's a reason behind it. It's not just random, and it can come into whatever ley lines or energy or
Yes.
whatever. So for those to be built on, yeah, that makes sense, right?
And my second book, The Templar Meridians, looks at the establishment of these settlements on earlier Templar foundations, but they also correlate to what I identify as these longitudinal meridians, uh, separated by 8 degrees of separation. So it's kind of fascinating to think that there were Templars with the aids of Native North Americans in the 12th, 13th, 14th centuries paddling upriver, and they knew exactly where they were going because Templars and other groups had been there before them.
Oh, Val, that's just wow. There's so many connections, and it's kind of mind-boggling when you sit down and you think like so much of everything that's happened in North America has been maybe because of everything that happened starting back with the Crusades.
1,000 years ago. You talk about history repeating itself.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
right.
the underlying sort of tenets have always been there. They've all, and you talk about the American Revolution and Lafayette leading the French and the French support of the Americans. There's a connotation there in terms of, what was really spoken quietly or in the secret signs.
Hmm,
The
hmm.
notion that the inkling of this Templar treasure and the presence of the French Knights Templar from centuries before, the notion that America was established essentially on those same tenets.
Right, right. And it seems like there's a it, it seems like the planners, I guess I'll say that the planners behind all of this, excuse my cat,
Oh, no problem.
the planners behind all this, you know, the Freemasons, whatever, it seems like it's almost more important. Their original goal is bigger than maybe the country itself.
I think so. I
Yeah.
think so. So when you think about it, now are those original tenets hijacked? Who knows? Have they been modified to a certain extent? I think so. But I think that there's a basic philosophy there that America's strong and free has remained the way it was originally intended. And I'm actually the official rep from the Sovereign Great Prior of Canada, Knights Templar of Canada, to the Grand Encampment Knights Templar USA. I was made the rep. It was quite an honor. It was down in Salt Lake City at their last triennial, the Grand Encampment's last triennial, and I've the American Knights Templar, as anywhere I find around the world, are the most honorable and most prestigious gentlemen that you can imagine.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So what what's the end game?
That's a good question. And has the end game been sort of scuttled a little bit by some of the current world politics? I don't know. The end game, I think, is for a free every country in the world to be a sanctuary of sorts, to be able to practice your religion, be able to pray to your God, to the Creator, to the force, whatever you consider that supreme being, in peaceful times. And unfortunately, we're not in those times, but I think it's coming. If you know the seven prophecies of the Ojibwe, they talk about this being the end of the seventh prophecy, moving into the eighth prophecy. And if the world doesn't recognize that we need to apply some of these uh, more spiritual tenets, then either we have one way or the other way to go. We can essentially obliterate ourselves, or that there be peace applied around the world, and that there be, again, I hate using the analogy of a new world order, but that there be some semblance of recognition of individual governments
Interesting.
and that philosophy. So. And
Interesting.
I hate saying that because it's like I'm preaching to most of the converted that listen to these podcasts and things like that, but and that read my books. But I'm surprised I've been contacted by a number of people from the I guess you would say the main game that really are trying in their own way to introduce these tenets themselves,
Right.
but sometimes they get railroaded. But
Yeah, for sure. It's just an interesting thing. Because Bill, we go through there's you know, I get in the weeds in this
yeah,
podcast. I mean, because I find the conspiracy stuff interesting. And then you find there's always, there's always kernels of truth out there,
Yes.
and obviously, and I'm not, surprising you by saying that, man, the Knights Templar, the Freemasons and whatnot, there's a ton of, speculation and whatnot about the organizations. And then you get into, the Rosicrucians and the Illuminati stuff and all the secret societies, and then you're opening like a can of worms into, you know, a cabal that is trying to rule the world and all that. But it just seems, Bill, like there's something that is uh, poised almost. It feels like we're at the precipice, so to speak. And I'm not saying that means we're going to jump and die. I'm just saying it feels like we're poised, you know, for something to happen. And I have a feeling that it is connected with all of everything that we've been talking about. It's almost as if there has been so much energy um, for centuries. I mean, centuries, millennia, even to come to a convergence point that we're getting close to.
You've hit the nail right on the head. People ask me, how can you have such a respectable career and be so professional? I belong to a number of professional organizations and have quite educational background and things like that. But how can you be so talk about conspiracy theories in the way that you do? And I said, everything I talk about, just take 1% the kernel of the truth and put it all together. And as you say, there appears to be an energy out there. And I feel it really when I go to spring and summer camps in the native camps. There's a philosophy there that it takes 7 generations to for anything to really to come to fruition. So we're talking about 150 years, maybe 7 generations. There's a reckoning or a reawakening, or it's going to be forced upon us that there's two pathways that the world can take. As I say, we can obliterate each other, or we can agree to build walls around everybody's country and throw grenades or whatever we want at them, or we can sit down and we can, like adults, like educated adults, discuss our differences and accept the differences. And that's the whole philosophy I think that I've taken away from the original Knights Templar. The original Knights Templar at one point realized that it was the Muslims that they couldn't defeat. So they developed pacts with the various groups and things like that. And they accepted that they would never be able to retake Jerusalem. So they looked at establishing their own new Jerusalem. So when you think about it, there's a lesson there to be learned. And I think the philosophies are out there. And I think that I feel so sorry for the young kids nowadays when I look at it. Lot of them have no direction or little direction. And I think what's going to happen is that there's going to be leaders that come about and that are going to be able to appeal to that sort of vagueness, that lost feeling, and really provides a spiritual direction. The Dalai Lama is an example. He's getting to be 90. Is he going to live to 130? Who knows? But he wants to be able to dictate how his reincarnation is going to be identified instead of the Chinese government. We're at the precipice of it going two ways, and that's a really prime example. And it was on the news last night, and I find it really a very strong message there. Self-determination is really what we're talking about.
Very interesting. Very interesting. I'll tell you what, this has been fascinating. Kind of opened my mind to a couple of things, Bill, and maybe connecting a few dots that I didn't know about. So, yeah, fascinating. Tell the folks how they can get your books, where they can find them, and
Well, the best way they can get them through Amazon or any of the large distributors, or they can go right to intertraditions.com. my publishers, and that's probably the best way because they save on a lot of duties and different things like that. And I have to give a shout out to Intertraditions. Intertraditions is one of the largest producers of alternative history, education, knowledge, spiritual knowledge, and uh, when after they found me, I've been able to write a number of books, 3 books in this line, and they've been very encouraging. So I give a shout out to them.
Yeah, they've been great. There's a number of their authors that I've been able to get with and have on this podcast just because of them, and they're awesome. So, do you have a website, anything like that?
I do have a website, but it's down for reconstruction, so I don't want to give you the website HTTP because it may change at this point in time.
Yeah.
According to my kids, it's too static, Dad. Have to change your website, right?
Too
So
static. Come on, Dad, your website's too static.
yeah, exactly.
Hey, for Father's Day, they should have got you something. They should have got you, like hey, we know what a non-static website looks like. We'll help you build it. That would have been nice,
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I got you. Well, listen, I appreciate you so much. I tell everyone this, if you come on this particular program, you're always welcome to come back. If you have anything you ever want to talk about, any new research or whatnot, any new books, please get a hold of me. I appreciate you so much. This has been fascinating.
Thank you, Ryan. It has been fascinating, and the offer goes out to you after you've thought a little bit more about some of what we're talked about. If there's another direction that you want to approach it, more than willing to talk about those types of things.
Awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, the one and only Bill Mann. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So what do you think? Were the Templars really here carving clues into stone, hiding treasure beneath our feet, all in an effort to establish their own country? Or is it all just legend? I know what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If this episode sparked something in you, hit like, share it, and help us bring these hidden stories to light. Your support keeps the Ryan Files digging deeper every week, and I can't thank you enough. Want to join the mission? Become a channel member right here on YouTube for exclusive emojis, early access, and so much more. Want to go deeper? Become an agent of the Ryan Files at patreon.com/the Ryan Files. Unlock behind the scenes content, bonus interviews, and so much more. And as always, visit us at theryanfiles.com, your hub for everything we do. You folks are awesome. Be amazing, be positive, and stay curious out there, my friends. And I'll see you right here next week on the Ryan Files.
Are you not curious?
Preparing to transfer the Ryan Files. Now.
I present to you, with great intrigue and wonder, the Ryan